when you were very young, what were your dreams?
Oh, see, I knew right from the beginning what I wanted to be. At the, let's say, when I was 9 years old, I was an altar boy, and I wanted to be a monk. And then later in the afternoon, I used to go to the movie theater, and there was a little old lady that ran a little tiny theater, and I used to help her change the posters. And I used to read all the little trade things she got in, and I wanted to be a movie publicist. And then even during high school, I used to do all the publicity on the shows. I was one of these very active people in high school, creatively. I used to be the class artist. I was on the school newspaper. I played Elwood P. Dowd in Harvey, the lead in the senior class play. After high school, I entered the religious order. I was in for 8 years. I'm what today they call a cafeteria Catholic. When you get into the dogma and the mysticism of the theologians and really, you know, the real message of Christ, not what fundamentalists have screwed up on and misinterpreted, but the beauty of the simplicity of, you know, to love one another as I have loved you, and just to let people be who they are. At one point in my life, I remember having an imaginary friend, and it was while I was at camp one summer, and that imaginary friend was God. It was an innocence of faith, and I don't think we really ever lose that. As soon as Rome said we could get rid of the habits, mine went in mothballs and I was in blue jeans. So the transition was, so many had left. A total of 28,000 priests, brothers, and nuns left their respective orders in a period of 1967 to 1970. So the transition was, the day I left on leave of absence, I was decided I wanted to be a movie publicist. And God took care of it. That was all part of my destiny. It happened. And it's been to my 20th year as a motion picture publicist. Well, when I first got sick, spirituality wasn't something I just discovered because I had AIDS, or got AIDS, or it was something all my life, even through the movie industry, as I worked. I mean, I meditated, I prayed. It was always a quest. So when I was ill, my spirituality gave me the strength to say, yes, this is what's going on, and it's okay. But it was a time of a lot of confusion as well. Should I tell this person? How do I do all this? And all the AIDS guys do. But fortunately, while I was in the hospital, I met a wonderful human being. In fact, two wonderful human beings. One was an AIDS person called Dan Williams. And we used to visit a lot in our rooms. And I asked Dan one day, I said, why are you so calm? Why are you so at peace? And he just smiled and he says, as is, so be it. And then I learned from my friend Kurt Cohagen, who was in great pain, but about a sense of humor, how to laugh, and also how to extend yourself to others instead of self. And then I learned that the enemies was not AIDS. The enemies were fear, self-pity, despair, depression, and desperation. Those men are all now dead, but they're in my heart and they'll always be. And then in the beginning, there were my close friends who were there for me, and the love. And I think we all have to quickly learn that it's not what we want or what we think we need. And if we just let people love in their own way and come in their own time, well, it's just a wonderful joy, and we're never disappointed. I think it's very important as we get through this to get to a very key element, and that is love. People who care. And a lot of it begins with your family. They did not ask the question, where did you get AIDS, or any of this stuff. You have AIDS, we're here. My stepfather, who raised me since I'm 10 years old, 9 years old, incredible human being who sat down and wrote a beautiful letter, said, you have always been part of this family and you always will be part of this family. And then, but had opened his letter saying, 5 years ago when this virus appeared, I prayed every day that it would spare you. But he hadn't learned to accept. And we share everything about what's going on. And it's the love of the family. He's brought my whole family together. I have an aunt in New York who's 75 and takes 3 days a week and cooks meals at her church that are brought to AIDS patients who cannot get out to cook. The family has come together in love, and that love overflows into my relationships with my friends because we love each other. We don't need, use the expression, all the, you know, the Mickey Mouse. And the greatest joy and the greatest day was Easter Sunday, which to me is so symbolic of new life in the beginning. My sister had a baby, and my stepfather called me, and he says, guess what? We have a baby named after us. And she named the baby this past Easter Sunday, Daniel John, Daniel for her father, and John for me. And then you're talking about, you know, it was just like everything I've prayed about, everything I've thought about people. God, you know, it was this wonderful gift of the cycle of life. I believe, you know, that that's where the core is. And through that love is the reason there is no anger. And the fact that I can be who I am and I don't have to lie. I can get up in front of 700 of the heads of studios and publicity in every area at the Beverly Hilton Hotel and say, I am a person with AIDS and it's okay. And that's why I'm not angry, because I know people care and they love. I could sit home and say, poor me, God, I'm gonna die. No, I get on the telephone. I share. People call me. I'm strong for them as well as they're strong for me. I'm tired at times when I can't talk and my body is going down. My counts are very low now. I'm down to some of the most ungodly T4 cell counts you can look at. But that's okay. I don't think about that. I think about that day and who I'm sharing with. But I don't isolate. Dying is simply a transition. There's a beautiful line from, you know, the song The Rose from the movie. And there's a line on the thing that says, the soul that is afraid to die is the soul that never learns to live. And there's so much to be said in that. And because of the way I think and my philosophy and my thing with God, energy goes on. We go on in a different dimension. And I have no fear of death. And I know my other friends with AIDS had no fear of death. I sometimes think maybe we got our words mixed up. Maybe we should come into this world with a death certificate and go out with a birth certificate. Maybe our real birthdays are the day we die, and that death is birth, and birth is death. God's given us the gift of a time schedule to say, you're like a little kid. We're going to visit Grandma, so time to get you dressed up and fixed up and looking good. And I think really what people's fear of death is not death, it's pain that they think they have to suffer. My friend Kurt says, it's not the age of the dying that I'm worried about. He says, it's this damn inconvenience of the pain we have to go through. And I think that's really what we're saying. The whole thing about AIDS there's always two sides to a coin. Yes, there is the pain and the suffering and the physical losses. But on the other side of the coin, AIDS is a gift. It's a gift where I've seen people who, busy even in our industry, producing, directing, or starring, stop and become aware of other people. I've seen people change their lives and become givers and lovers. I've seen people suddenly become aware of what they're really here for. And I think we only have to look at the night the quilts were presented to think that 10,000 people fill the Pauley Pavilion at UCLA. And color, religion, sexual preference, sex itself, nothing made a difference. It was the love. And every quilt that floated in the air or flooded in the air or was on the ground was a human being, and that quilt was made out of love. And in that room, for me to see the rabbi swaying back and forth to black gospel music with his arms around the Episcopal bishop and the Catholic Monsignor, and seeing women clergy participating and all these things that I'm for, and to see the love and the joy and the sorrow that people, yes, they grieved out, they cried and they grieved, but then there was the joy. And I was able to turn around in that room and say, not one person who has died of AIDS has died in vain, because for so many, it has taught them to love. And that's all we're here for, is to learn to love. And I still say, from Auntie Mame, live, live, live. Life's a banquet and some poor suckers are starving to death.